Thank you, Marcus. I'm Johan Falk from Intel, and I'm heading up our newly started IoT Ignition Lab in Stockholm, which we kicked off this May. And that's all about how we can accelerate innovation in IoT. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So that's what I will talk about, accelerating innovation and even more important, scale out. As Marcus mentioned, a key challenge for all this type of innovation and solutions is actually how can we commercialize these solutions and scale them out on the global scale. Before doing that, I'll jump back a little bit to the hype curve and the opportunities with Internet of Things on a high level. What we expect is that 2020, as you all know, more than 50 billion devices connected to the internet, and they will generate a tremendous amount of data, something like 35 zettabytes of data, which is a really big number. Do you know how big it is? It's 35 with 21 zeros, so that is a big number. In terms of potential market value, there is also a big number. Cisco claims that 2020 this could represent something like $19 trillion. So that's $19 million for the complete IoT market. But even more important, how can IoT contribute to actually addressing some of the key issues of the planet? The E-Sustainability Initiative, they have concluded that ICT and IoT solutions can actually contribute to reduce CO2 emissions by more than 16% by 2020, which is quite substantial. And on top of that, create a high number of jobs and economy. One key segment here is what we would talk around today, smart venues and smart buildings. According to this investigation, that would represent around 20%, so that's quite substantial. One example, I mean, Marcus already mentioned a lot of different cases, but think about construction sites. This is actually a real IoT solution in commercial usage for construction sites here in Sweden, provided by one of our partners here, Jansi, which is a centralized IoT solution where you actually can measure all the processes around the construction site as well as the energy consumption. And the customers, they believe that this could reduce energy consumption more than 20%. So that's just one example. So what about accelerating innovation? I'd like just to start with Moore's law, which you all are familiar with. It's named after Gordon Moore, who's one of the founders of Intel. So it basically means that we double the processing capacity in computing every other year, and we're now at 14 nanometers. And this pace is continuing, and this basically have enabled the internet revolution and the PC revolution. One key point is that this is also based on the internet spiral, that we actually have services, applications, and a very rich ecosystem that continuously utilize this technology and utilize the increased performance. So as Marcus mentioned, it's absolutely essential that the market and technology goes hand in hand. So this is a great example. What would this mean if we would transfer this to other industries? Let's take the airline industry as an example. If we would have seen the same pace of development in the airline industry as in the Intel chips, we would be able to have a plane with 120 million passengers going from Stockholm to New York in 8 minutes. So that's quite interesting. So we also believe that some of these learnings and capabilities could be used to transform some of the more traditional industries in a faster pace. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges we see. And the first challenge is that there are a lot of IoT solutions out there today, but we see a high level of fragmentation on the market. So normally, each application uses its own hardware, top to bottom, and they're all verticalized. This makes it really difficult to scale and get the economy of scale out on the market and get the pace of innovation and increase the pace of innovation. You basically have to reinvent each solution every time, which is very different to how the internet works. So what will happen and what we are driving and together with other companies such as Ericsson, etc., is actually breaking the silos, going from the absolute verticals to a more horizontalized architecture, where you will have common elements like secure managed IoT networks in the middle, but have open interfaces to develop services, applications, analytics, and a really quick pace, but also have open interfaces to develop new type of sensors in a really quick pace. So we believe this is one key enabler to actually increase the speed of innovation. From an Intel viewpoint, we are of course contributing with building standard building blocks all the way from the cloud to the network to the gateways down to the things based on processing technology, but also adding up some key core elements such as security. Security is absolutely essential, as we know, for Internet of Things, which can be reused by other type of developers and services and applications. So that's one part. Another key challenge is what we call the Death Valley, which you might be familiar with if you have been there as well, as I have a couple of times as an innovator. It basically means that a lot of innovation and startups end up in this Death Valley. They never scale, and they will never become really big, large global solutions. So that's really a strong challenge, not at least in the IoT market. We see a lot of great innovation, not at least in Sweden, but how can we actually contribute that we become more successful in scaling solutions to become real commercial global solutions? From an Intel viewpoint, I mean, one approach to this, we have many approaches, but it's actually one reason that we kicked off our Ignition Labs is actually how can we contribute to accelerate innovation and scaling of innovation. So Intel decided this spring to set up 5 innovation labs, innovation centers in Europe. One is in Sweden, and one of the reasons why we selected Sweden, why Intel selected Sweden, is firstly that we have a lot of great innovation in Sweden. Innovative, both large companies, small companies, startups and organizations and research. But also not at least that we have organizations and end users which actually can embrace new type of solutions in a quick way. And there is an opportunity to develop, we believe, new business models and value chains in a fast pace in order to create showcases. So what are the objectives with this Ignition Lab? Well, first, of course, it's a one-stop shop for technology to provide access to technology and building blocks, as we talked about. And the second is it's a sort of meeting place for events and for the ecosystem. And thirdly, what I think is the most important is actually to directly invest in leading business projects where we actually work through the complete value chain, both with the customers, partners, and technology providers to pilot, commercialize, and with the intention to scale solution on a global basis. We believe most of the challenges, as Marcus said as well, is not actually in the technology. Whole lot of these blocks exists. It's actually the business model to prove the usage value, and also maybe to influence the value chains to embrace these solutions. So that's where the key challenges are. And we decided that we should also invest in that from an interview point to work with partners in the ecosystem. One of the strong parts with Intel is that we have a very large ecosystem globally, but we're also building this in the Nordics with some of the leading providers, as you can see also in this room, which we are working very closely with. We're expanding this every day. So it's all about basically how can we accelerate innovation, piloting, and commercialization to achieve customer value, profitability, sustainability. And we very much believe in the approach of using a lean business development model. It's not about creating the perfect solution and bring it to market. It's actually to create an assumption of how you solve the customer problems, to bring a first solution to the market, and to get the really fast feedback from your customers in order to improve the solutions in a really fast pace. And to do this together with your customers and partners through the value chain. That we believe is a recipe. I give you 2 examples of projects which we have worked with, just to give you an idea. And we'll have some more examples later this day. We talked about smart buildings and what would be the needs of next generation smart buildings, and how could we approach that with our technology. We said, well, there is a massive need of this mobile data at the edge in office buildings, mall stadiums, etc. At the same time, there is a massive need of Internet of Things infrastructure. We're not talking about tens, maybe thousands of sensors per building. We need to have solutions which are secure, and not at least the infrastructure has to be highly efficient in terms of managing all these gateways and sensors, and we need to have a radical OpEx reduction compared to the systems today. And these systems also have to enable rapid service innovation and technology innovation in sensors and a rich ecosystem. So really high demands if you start from that perspective. So what we did was to see, well, can we create such a system and get some feedback on the market as a first step, or such a solution. So we pulled together a number of partners, and this I think is basically more to show how you can work with innovation. A number of leading companies in each segment, such as Clavister for security gateways, Jansi, Connect them, a virtual EPC provider, and LT base station provider, to basically build this type of solution, prototype it in 3 months based on a virtualized architecture. So what it means is basically for a smart building that you can have one solution, one centralized system with a virtualized architecture supporting both LTE, Wi-Fi, and Internet of Things access points, and then basically implementing all the applications as virtualized entities. And we believe with this type of architecture you can actually address these key points. We brought it to World Congress, we showed it for 35 companies, plus 150 people, key decision makers, as you can see on the right, in order to get some direct feedback, really fast feedback. And the key conclusions were, well, they all confirmed this is the way to go. This is probably the right architecture. This is how it will develop. It also showcased how fast you can do things if you work together, if you work with the ecosystem and put a really strong target. Do it in 3 months instead of 2 years. It's definitely possible. We can do things much faster than we think. It also highlighted some of the key issues. Well, the key issues is very much related to what is the usage value, what usage models will drive this type of architecture, how will the value chain look like? So these were the questions coming up in particular. So that's also some of our other projects. We are putting more focus on actually working with the user value and the customer value. So this is one other example which Fredrik, who is here today, will talk about a little bit later today, where we are actually looking at applying exactly the same architecture, but actually focusing on how can we IoTify facility management? How can we make facility management smart by handling everything from waste bins to refill to energy, etc., using the same horizontalized architecture, but actually proving this in a real pilot to really prove the customer value before you scale it. That's a way to work as far as we see it. So what we will do next, which we would like to work with all of you on as well, and this is really an early idea, where we're working together with SICS and some other partners. And we will apply some of our learnings here in order to take the next step. How can we speed up this further? Our plan would be to establish an innovation network where the goal should be to accelerate IoT innovation speed significantly, and where it would be possible to develop services and sensors in days, and with the same focus as we talked about before: smart buildings, venues, public places. And the idea is to start with the hackathon challenge, where we very much apply this structure as a starting point and to capture the experiences if this is possible. And the idea is basically that small companies or developers or larger company could have an access to manage secure IoT network, and actually focus on the application side and the sensor sides. It should provide open interfaces for service and sensor development, which has to be pre-standard, since it's not really one standard in place. But I think the intention from all the parties is to develop the words standards and scaling to as far extent as possible, and openness. I think the third point, maybe the most important, is we definitely would like to provide a path for piloting, commercialization, and scaling through our organizations. So if an SME invests in building applications, there should be an opportunity to come into real pilots based on the same type of architecture to speed up this potential scale out. So this is what we are planning, and sorry. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'd just like to summarize. IoT is a big opportunity, and Moore's Law will continue to fuel development. We believe we can take a lot of learnings from the IT industry to transform a lot of traditional industry in a much faster pace. We will work on break the silos together, which is really important to come over to a more internet-based model. We should invest in real business development together with innovators, so we can cross the Death Valley. And one part of that is that we are investing in our IoT Ignition Labs, which is more a meeting place for the ecosystem and a way to work with concrete business development. And the next step will be an IoT innovation platform, which we will put up, and we will invite parties to contribute in. Thank you, everyone.
So, thank you, Johan. I think we have time for one or two questions from the audience. Okay, are you a bit shy this morning? No one? Okay, I have a question for you. Currently there is an international IoT conference going on in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, and MIT. And just the other day, there was a panel during this conference with thought leaders in IoT discussing why innovation is not taking off. And they were talking about the horizontalization versus verticalization. And there seemed to be an agreement among these thought leaders that we should stop focusing on horizontalization and rather go with the tracks where there is a thrust in IoT today and skip trying to solve everything at the same time. What's your opinion on that matter? Would you like to comment on that further?
We should definitely approach all the opportunities where you can go as fast as possible, even if it's based on a vertical approach, of course, and we are involved in thousands of such solutions. So I totally agree on that, but I do believe at the same time we should work on an architecture we can actually increase the pace of innovation. So I think we have to do both at the same time. I think the key point is actually to work with real use cases together with key customers, partners, and the value chain to actually prove the usage value. So I think that is really where we have to put our key focus.
Okay, thanks. One question from the audience, then we need to move on. Wait a minute.
I have a question regarding the smart facilities. In that scope, are you thinking about how to secure that you have a smart future solution, in the sense that you have built in the capacity to have new, like, we don't know in 10 years what we would like to have. Are the buildings as such sustainable so that they can endure new technologies and have the capacity to embrace those?
I think one of the basic principles that we're going for in these sort of key projects initially is actually put in place a platform where you very easily can add new type of applications and services in a really fast pace. If you look at a building like this, we probably have 15 different type of systems, one for energy, one for ventilation, one for communications, etc. So probably 15 systems, and it's very slow in terms of introduce new innovation. We believe it's possible by having this type of approach to improve the pace radically. So you actually can implement new services maybe in days in terms of facility management. I think we have to build the systems and not trying to understand what would be the precise requirements in 2 or 3 years.
Okay, thank you, Johan. We need to move on. Johan will be here all day today, so I think you can
That's
take
right.
more questions in the breaks. So thank you very much again, Johan.
Thank you. Thanks.